Beneath the ocean's surface, there are animals calling each other by name, and they have been doing it for millions of years before language existed. Not poetry, not wishful thinking, but the hard conclusion of more than 40 years of underwater acoustic research. Every bottlenose dolphin invents a sound utterly unique, belonging to no other creature in the entire ocean, and carries it for life. So what happens when creatures with names reel? Individual names find each other in the darkness of the deep. The answer quietly erases a line you thought was permanent, the line between culture and instinct, between us and every other living thing. Bottlenose dolphins live in nearly every warm and temperate ocean on Earth, from the tropical coasts of Australia to the Mediterranean, from shallow coastal bays to the open sea. They live in fluid, shifting societies, individuals leaving and rejoining groups day by day, week by week, driven by purpose rather than obligation. Scientists call this structure fission fusion, a community that constantly reshapes itself but never truly falls apart. A fully grown bottlenose dolphin can reach over 8 feet in length, weigh as much as 660 pounds, and live for 50 years in the wild. 50 years long enough to remember dozens of names, dozens of faces, dozens of events written into the memory of a particular stretch of sea. Their brain is larger than that of any land mammal of comparable body size, second only to humans in the ratio of brain to body. The regions of their cortex linked to social processing, individual recognition, and emotion are developed in ways neuroscientists still cannot fully explain. Unlike us, dolphins do not breathe automatically. Every breath is a conscious decision, which means they never fully lose themselves to sleep. One hemisphere of their brain sleeps, while the other stays awake, taking turns, so the body rests without ever sinking below the surface. But the true complexity of this animal lives not in its body, it lives in what it says to others, in the darkness, every single night. Bottlenose dolphins use more than 1,000 distinct sound types, whistles, clicks, groans, and complex sequences that science has not yet found words for. But among all of those sounds, one stands apart: the signature whistle, a brief, self-composed melody each dolphin invents in early life and carries always. This whistle is unlike any other in the ocean. Even among siblings born of the same mother, no two signature whistles are the same. When they reunite after long separation, the very first thing they do is exchange signature whistles as humans exchange names upon meeting. This is not reflex, it is a consistent social ritual, documented across decades of field observation in Sarasota Bay, Florida. The Sarasota Dolphin Research Program, founded by Dr. Randy Wells in 1969, is the longest continuously running wild dolphin study anywhere on Earth. More than 50 years of data have allowed scientists to track individuals from birth to death and map their social relationships across multiple generations. What they found overturned the long-held assumption that complex communication was the exclusive territory of species with spoken language. Dolphins do not only recognize each other's whistles, they recognize the whistles of individuals they have not encountered for 20 years. This is evidence of long-term social memory in a non-primate, and it forced scientists to rewrite their own definitions of what memory means. To understand how bottlenose dolphins are capable of this, we must enter their sound-making system, an apparatus unlike anything that evolved on land. Dolphins have no vocal cords. Instead, they generate sound using two small air sacs positioned just beneath their blowhole at the top of the skull. The large spherical fat mass at the front of the skull, called the melon, acts as an acoustic lens, shaping and focusing every sound they produce. Astonishingly, dolphins can produce two entirely independent streams of sound simultaneously, as if two separate conversations were running in parallel within a single body. One stream is used for echolocation, sending out ultrasonic click pulses that map the surrounding environment with millimeter-level precision. The other stream carries social communication whistles, moans, and structured tonal sequences too complex to have been fully decoded. The signature whistle forms in the first weeks of a dolphin's life, while the calf is still nursing and experiencing the world for the very first time. This is called vocal social learning, meaning the social environment surrounding the calf directly shapes the sound it creates as its identity. This is not imitation, it is genuine innovation. Each calf does not copy its parents, but invents an entirely new sound from its own emerging experience. Only 3 animal groups are known to possess this capacity for true vocal learning: cetaceans, songbirds, and humans. The brain regions controlling vocal learning in dolphins and humans are architecturally entirely different, yet they arrive at the same outcome: identity expressed through sound. This reveals that evolution found the same solution on 2 entirely separate branches of the tree of life, a phenomenon called convergent evolution. Convergent evolution does not merely mean 2 species look alike, it means they faced pressures similar enough to demand the same cognitive capacity from entirely different brains. That pressure, in the case of bottlenose dolphins, was the sheer social complexity of the world they built over tens of millions of years of evolution. That society required individual recognition, the memory of relationship histories, and the transmission of information across generations precisely as ours does. And to do all of this in a world without light, where vision is nearly useless, sound had to become language. But dolphin communication does not stop at names. There is growing evidence that they address each other by name within ongoing conversations. A 2013 study by Dr. Stephanie King at the University of St. Andrews showed that dolphins copy an alliance partner's whistle when searching for them in dark water. In other words, they do not wait for their partner to appear, they call that specific individual by producing that individual's own sound. This was the first time such behavior had been systematically documented in any non-human animal, and it opened an entirely new field of inquiry. Once science confirmed that dolphins have individual names, the next unavoidable question became, do they understand that other beings also possess a distinct self? In 1970, psychologist Gordon Gallup Jr. placed a mirror before a chimpanzee and found that it recognized the reflection as itself, not as another animal. The mirror self-recognition test became the gold standard for measuring self-awareness in animals, and for decades, only a handful of great apes could pass it. In 1995, researchers Diana Rice and Laurie Marino demonstrated that bottlenose dolphins passed the same test, joining the great apes in an extraordinarily small group. They did not attack the reflection, did not flee from it, and did not treat it as a stranger. They looked into the mirror and knew they were seeing themselves. Self-awareness is not merely knowing you exist. It is the foundation for understanding that other beings also exist as subjects, not merely as objects. And if a dolphin understands that the self in the mirror belongs to it, then it can also understand that the dolphin beside it possesses a self of its own. This is the neurological basis of empathy, the capacity to place oneself inside another individual's perspective and predict their emotional state. Field observations show dolphins consoling each other after pod conflicts, staying beside injured individuals until they can swim independently, and sometimes remaining even after death. This is what few expect, that grief behavior, one of the most complex expressions of social consciousness, is not a human monopoly. But among all expressions of dolphin social intelligence, perhaps none is more astonishing than their capacity to transmit culture vertically across generations. In 2003, Dr. Michael Crutzen and his team at the University of Zurich published a finding that shook the field of animal behavior research worldwide. In Shark Bay, Western Australia, a small subset of female dolphins had developed a hunting technique found nowhere else in those waters and passed down to no one outside their lineage. They used conical sea sponges to cover their rostrum while probing the sandy seafloor for hidden fish, protecting the most sensitive skin on their body from sharp buried debris. This behavior, named sponging, was transmitted almost exclusively from mother to daughter, not from fathers, not from the broader pod, but mother to daughter alone. Sponging is not encoded in the species genes, proven by the fact that males in the same population never acquire the behavior despite sharing the same parents. This is the scientific definition of culture behavior created not by genetics, not by environment alone, but by the transfer of learned knowledge from individual to individual. Sponging is just one of many foraging techniques that differ between dolphin populations living in different parts of the world's oceans. In the shallow waters off Charleston, South Carolina, certain pods herd fish onto mudbanks in a coordinated maneuver called strand feeding, a technique no Shark Bay dolphin has ever learned. Each dolphin population carries its own cultural toolkit shaped by local geography and preserved by teaching across generations, as distinctly as any human regional tradition. And this is where the question science cannot yet fully answer begins. How does culture remain stable across decades with no writing, no schools, no codified rules? That question leads us to the strangest thing science has found about bottlenose dolphin society, the tiered male alliance system. In Shark Bay, males do not live alone and do not simply compete for females. They form stable alliances that persist for decades, bound by something closer to loyalty than instinct. 2 or 3 males form a first-order alliance, jointly guarding a single female, moving with her and repelling rival alliances together. But more surprising still, first-order alliances link together to form second-order alliances, 4 to 14 males acting as an alliance of alliances. A 2022 study led by Dr. Richard Connor identified a third tier, a vast super-alliance network previously undocumented in any species other than humans. 3 tiers of alliance operating simultaneously in a society with no clear leader, no linear hierarchy, and no fixed territory. To maintain that network, each male must remember not only his own allies, but his allies' allies, and the entire history of each relationship within the web. Psychologists call this third-order social cognition, the ability to reason about relationships between individuals that do not directly involve oneself. This capacity was once considered a defining feature of primate intelligence, reserved specifically for the great apes and for humans. But the picture grows more complex when we ask, if dolphins possess all of these capacities, why have they not built a civilization? The answer is not simply that they are not intelligent enough. That answer has been definitively overturned by the evidence. Part of the answer lies here: dolphins have no hands. No hands means no manufacturing, no construction, no capacity to accumulate material culture across generations, the prerequisite for every civilization humanity has ever built. But the deeper mystery scientists are still debating is whether dolphins would want to build, whether material civilization is the inevitable product of intelligence or merely the path humans happen to take. Dolphins have been observed playing with no survival purpose whatsoever, leaping through self-made bubble rings, toying with random objects, surfing waves they had no need to ride. Non-functional play is one of the strongest indicators of advanced cognition and self-aware consciousness, and it appears consistently in dolphins from every studied population. Individual dolphins have been observed learning to create bubble rings and then teaching the technique to other pod members with no survival benefit to justify the transmission. This means they transmit knowledge not only for survival, but for a reason we can only describe as sharing experience. Here is the greatest paradox of the bottlenose dolphin. They meet every criterion humans have ever used to distinguish themselves from the rest of nature. Individual names, self-awareness, culture transmitted across generations, complex political alliances, empathy, creative play, long-term social memory. And all of it evolved on a line entirely separate from our own, in an environment where no human could survive a single day. This leads to a perspective few of us dare face directly, that bottlenose dolphins may not be intelligent in the way humans are, but intelligent in a way entirely their own. Humans have historically defined intelligence as the ability to do what humans do well: mathematics, tool manufacture, written language, state formation. But that definition is like judging swimming ability by measuring who runs faster on land. The wrong measure will always return the wrong result. Dolphins have solved the same fundamental survival problems as humans, but with entirely different tools, and in many cases with solutions far more elegant than our own. The problem of communication and identification in darkness solved with acoustic names, not written ones. The problem of preserving knowledge across generations solved through direct mother-to-offspring teaching, not libraries. The problem of alliance and collective strength solved through 3 tiers of social relationship that function without a constitution, without written law. If we judge dolphins by criteria suited to their world, they fall short of humans in precisely none of them. That forces a wider question about the nature of intelligence itself. Is it a single thing, or a family of different solutions to the same problem of survival? Some neuroscientists now argue that the dolphin brain evolved to process social complexity in ways the human brain simply cannot, not lesser, but different in kind. The emotional and social processing regions of the dolphin brain are proportionally larger than their equivalents in the human brain, meaning their social experience may be richer and more saturated in ways we cannot imagine. If that is true, then it is not dolphins who experience the world in a diminished way. Compared to us, it may be precisely the reverse. Here is where science and philosophy meet, and none of us carry tools sufficient to go further with certainty. But what we can say with scientific certainty is this: there is at least one other species on Earth that knows the names of those around it, and has known this far longer than we have. And because the closest living land relatives of dolphins are even-toed ungulates related to hippopotamuses, that social intelligence formed entirely independently in the ocean, with no template. This means Earth did not produce social intelligence once; it produced it at least twice, and the second time happened in silence, beneath the sea, unwitnessed until recently. That parallel is not coincidence. It reveals that when the pressures of social life are great enough and ancient enough, brains converge on the same set of capacities. Individual names, empathy, culture transmitted across generations, and political alliance are not human inventions. They are features of complex social life, and they emerge whenever that complexity reaches sufficient scale, regardless of species, regardless of habitat. That places before us a final question, not about dolphins, but about ourselves. Knowing all of this, have we changed how we act? Hundreds of thousands of bottlenose dolphins are still caught, deafened by noise pollution, and stripped of habitat every year, while we continue debating the definition of intelligence. Somewhere beneath the ocean's surface, right now, a dolphin is calling another by name in the dark. The other hears it and turns, because it knows that sound belongs to it alone. That meeting requires no light, no hands, no written word, only a sound and the memory of a particular someone. And that meeting has been happening millions of times a day, for millions of years, long before any of us learned to speak our own names. Earth did not wait for humans to invent connection. It built connection long before us, in languages we have not yet translated. And every time a dolphin calls a name in the darkness of the ocean, it is a reminder that we have never been the only named species on this planet. Beneath the ocean's surface, there are animals calling each other by name, and they were doing it long before we knew such a thing was possible.